If you've been walking with me through our conversations on emotions, emotional intelligence, and people pleasing, today we're taking the next step. What happens when those emotions don't get felt at all, and your body quietly holds the bill? If you've been told your labs are basically normal, but your body is screaming otherwise, like with migraines, gut issues, 3 a.m. wake ups, blood pressure creeping up, this episode is for you. In mid-season life, especially if you spent years being the strong one who swallows hurt and keeps the peace, repressed emotions don't just disappear. They show up as a slow, invisible stressor in your nervous system, your immune system, and your heart. Today, we're going to talk about what that actually means in your body, and more importantly, how to start letting some of that emotional load go without feeling like you're going to drown in it. Welcome to Rooted Insights, a podcast for women in their second season of life who've spent years caring for everyone else. Kids, partners, work, households, holding it all together while quietly putting your own needs on the back burner. If you now find yourself wondering, what's next for me? What do I really want from my life now? And how do I start prioritizing myself without dropping everything else? You're in the right place. Hi, I'm Dr. Kelley, a health and well-being specialist and mind-body expert, and here we blend grounded, science-informed practices into everyday life so we can better support our hardworking nervous systems, emotional health, and authentic selves, especially in this powerful mid-season of life. In recent episodes, we've talked about emotional intelligence, the difference between emotions and feelings, and the power of listening to what your body is telling you. Today, we're going to zoom in on something that quietly shapes a lot of mid-season women's health, what happens in your body when emotions are repressed, meaning pushed down, brushed aside, or swallowed for years, and how you can begin to release that load safely without feeling overwhelmed. This isn't about blaming you for getting sick or saying if you just felt your feelings, everything would be fine. It's about understanding one very real piece of the mind-body puzzle so you can work with your body a little more kindly and consciously in this transformational season of life. Take a slow inhale and a slightly longer exhale. And just notice how your body feels hearing the words repressed emotions. Maybe curious, maybe cautious, and that's okay. We'll go gently in this episode and maybe offer you new clues or curiosities you can explore further as you get to know your body on a deeper level. I want to start with a story you might recognize pieces of. Let's call her Maya. She's in her early 50s, she's a longtime healthcare worker, and grown or almost grown kids, and the person everyone describes as rock solid. She's the one who keeps a calm voice in staff meetings, who steps into the difficult patient situations, and who shows up for her friends, family, and coworkers, and who takes care of aging parents on the weekends. If you ask her how she is, her default answer is, "Oh, I'm fine, just busy." She rarely cries, she almost never raises her voice, and she prides herself on staying composed. And then, in her mid-40s to 50s, things start to shift. She begins having migraines that knock her down for a day at a time. Her digestion becomes unpredictable. Bloating, cramps, IBS-like symptoms that seem to flare when life is stressful, but she brushes it off as just part of the midlife female menopause journey. Sleep gets choppy, she wakes at 3 a.m. with her heart pounding and can't explain why. Her blood pressure creeps up. She does the responsible thing and goes to see her doctor. The labs are basically normal, and she hears a lot of, "It's just stress," or "It's just part of the menopause process." And while those are pieces of the picture, no one asks what's been happening emotionally for the last 20 or 30 years. Then one day, sitting in her car after work, she realizes she can't remember the last time she allowed herself to actually feel angry about something that hurt her or to fully grieve a loss. Her whole identity is built on being the strong one, the one who doesn't fall apart. Her body, though, is telling a different story. Today is about understanding what might be happening inside a body like Maya's and maybe inside your own, when emotions have been asked to stay quiet for a very long time, either out of habit or environmental conditioning. So before we dive into physiology, let's clarify the language a bit so we're on the same page throughout the remainder of this episode. When I say repressed emotions, I'm talking about feelings that, for a variety of reasons, never really got to be felt, named, or expressed. There are a few related patterns of this. The first is called repression. That's where emotions are pushed out of awareness automatically, often because earlier in life it wasn't safe or acceptable to feel or show them. Maybe you learned that good girls don't get angry or that crying made things worse, so your system learned to keep certain emotions outside of your conscious awareness. Then there's suppression. You do notice an emotion, but you actively push it down, like, there's no time for this, or it's not a big deal, or I just need to get on with it. This is more conscious, but the body still has to hold the physiological charge of it when it gets pushed down without any type of meaningful release or expression of it. And finally, there's alexithymia. This is a word you may or may not be familiar with that you'll sometimes see in research. It's used to describe difficulty identifying and describing emotions. People with higher alexithymia scores often say things like, I don't know what I feel, I just feel off, or they talk about physical symptoms more than their emotions. The key piece is this. These emotions don't just disappear regardless of how you are or are not addressing them. They live in patterns of muscle tension, breathing, your heart rate, gut activity, and immune signaling, and in the stories your mind has learned to tell you to keep you functioning. It's less mind over matter and more mind and emotion showing up as matter. So let's walk through three main areas using a bit of gentle science to see how repression shows up in the body through your stress system, your immune system, and your heart vascular system. The first is the stress system, where it's stuck in on mode. When emotions are consistently blocked or minimized, the body often stays in a low-grade stress response, even when nothing dramatic is happening. Your stress system, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, or HPA axis, releases hormones like cortisol and adrenaline to help you cope with challenges. That's helpful in short bursts, but studies show that chronic emotional suppression is linked with heightened and prolonged physiological responses to stress. Things like higher heart rate, blood pressure, and cortisol that stay elevated longer. Over time, this kind of chronic activation is associated with things like anxiety and depression, sleep problems, being tired but wired, and early waking. It's linked with muscle tension, headaches, and pain, and increased risk of high blood pressure, heart disease, and stroke. In midlife women, perimenopause and menopause already bring changes in how the brain and body respond to stress. Many women report more mood swings, irritability, and emotional sensitivity. Layer years of emotional self-silencing on top of all that, and the physiological load can become quite high. Next, let's talk about your immune system and inflammation. Your immune system listens closely to your emotional environment. Psychoneuroimmunology research finds that chronic stress and emotional suppression can activate inflammatory pathways, increasing pro-inflammatory cytokines and oxidative stress. And it can also impair aspects of immune defense, such as natural killer cell function. For women who are already more prone to autoimmune conditions, this pattern can show up as flares in autoimmune diseases, or ongoing fatigue, body aches, and mystery inflammatory symptoms, or increased susceptibility to infections or slower recovery. A recent piece focusing on women highlighted that emotional suppression and chronic self-silencing, which is years of swallowing your truth, are associated with immune dysregulation and higher inflammatory burden. Finally, let's talk about heart and cardiovascular risk. Difficulty with emotional awareness and expression isn't just an internal experience, it's been tied to heart outcomes. A Finnish study following adults found that higher alexithymia scores predicted greater cardiovascular mortality over about 20 years, even after accounting for traditional risk factors. And more recent work shows alexithymia and related suppression patterns are linked to higher estimated 10-year cardiovascular risk and worse outcomes after heart attacks. For midlife women, heart disease risk begins to climb after menopause. Emotional literacy, actually noticing and processing what you feel, can legitimately be part of heart care, alongside blood pressure, lipids, and movement. One way to summarize your own body is repressed emotions act like a slow, invisible stressor. They keep your stress system turned up, your immune system on edge, and your cardiovascular system working harder than it needs to. But you can change this. If you're noticing more emotional intensity or more physical symptoms in this season, that doesn't mean you're falling apart. There are good reasons it's showing up now. Perimenopause and menopause are not just about menstrual cycles stopping. They're major neuroendocrine transitions. Estrogen and progesterone shift, influencing serotonin, dopamine, and other neurotransmitters involved in mood and stress. Many women experience increased anxiety, irritability, low mood, and sleep disruption during this window. If you've coped for decades by pushing down emotion, this shift can unmask what's been there all along. By midlife, you may have decades of caregiving for students if you're a teacher, patients if you're a caregiver, kids, partners, or parents. Years of workplace emotional labor, being calm, patient, and regulated for others even when you're not okay inside. And a long history of people-pleasing and self-silencing to keep the peace. Your personal emotional bucket gets full. Your body starts to say, we can't keep holding all of this without consequences. Psychologically, midlife is a natural time of reevaluation. Think of it as your own scheduled personal audit, with questions arising like, is this the life I want? What do I actually feel about this marriage, this job, this friendship, this family member, and this pace? And if I'm honest, what have I been carrying that isn't actually mine or that simply no longer serves who I am now? If you've always survived by not feeling, this can be disorienting, but it's also a powerful invitation. Your body and your deeper self are asking for a more truthful, kinder way of being. So I want to be very clear. If you have a trauma history or feel terrified of feeling your own feelings, this is where working with a skilled therapist or practitioner is really important. A podcast isn't a replacement for that, any podcast. What I can offer here are tiny practical steps rooted in my own personal experiences and science-informed studies and research that help your system experience feeling as something you can touch and take steps to move through without drowning. There's no such thing as a quick fix or a one-size-fits-all intervention. Your history, your body, and your nervous system are unique. So as you listen, I'd invite you to practice your own discernment and listen to your natural intuition about what feels like a yes, a not yet, or a this is too much for me right now. And if you notice that these practices stir up more distress than relief, or bring up memories or sensations that feel overwhelming, that's your cue to pause and reach for more support, not to push through alone. You're allowed to ask for help. These tools are here to complement, not replace, the deeper healing work you may choose to do with a therapist or other qualified practitioner. So now let's start with our first practice, called the 60-second emotion check-in. Once a day, maybe first thing in the morning, before you move into the activities of your day, or when you pull into the driveway after work, or at the end of the day right before bed, give this a try. Pause. Feel your feet on the floor or your body against a chair or comfortably on the bed, and scan your body quickly. Your face, your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, your arms, chest, belly, legs, and feet. And ask, if my body had one emotion right now, what would it be? You're not looking for perfection, just the first genuine emotion that pops into your mind. It might be tired, irritated, sad, grateful, or numb. And quietly say to yourself, of course you feel whatever that is. I see you. Then breathe gently and move on with your day or your night's sleep. You're not trying to process everything with this first practice, and you're not trying to fix the emotion or make it disappear. You're teaching your nervous system that emotions are allowed to be noticed, even briefly. And if we bring in some science here, labeling emotions has been shown to reduce amygdala activation and support regulation, often referred to as name it to tame it, not name to blame or name to shame. Keep it brief and gentle, a simple observation. Using this simple, uncomplicated check-in is a great way to teach your emotional body and physical body to begin to communicate with you, if it wasn't already, without placing any extra heavy fix-it burdens on it. Moving on to our second practice, called a tiny truth upgrade. The next time someone you trust asks, how are you? See if you can upgrade I'm fine to something 5% more honest. Maybe it's, I'm pretty drained today, or it's been a big week, or I'm okay and also a little sad, or I feel grounded and good today, or my sleep was a little off, I'm looking forward to a better night's rest tonight, or my energy has been a little up and down today. You don't have to tell the whole story. You're simply letting your inner and outer worlds line up a bit more, which reduces the internal strain of pretending and helps your body feel less like it has to hold a secret. Next, try practice 3. It's called structured venting. Give yourself 5 minutes, once or twice a week, to express what you usually swallow. You can write it in a journal, record a voice note, or speak with a trusted friend, partner, or therapist, using clear boundaries. Use a simple structure. Start with recounting what happened, using just the facts. Then, ask yourself, what am I actually feeling about it? And use emotion words: angry, hurt, disappointed, scared, lonely, annoyed. And then ask, what old story does this tap into? For example, I'm not valued, I always have to fix everything, or my needs don't matter. You want to set a timer for 5 minutes. When it goes off, intentionally close the practice. Stand up, shake out your hands, your body, then take 3 slow, grounding breaths, or look at something comforting in your environment. You can name 3 things you see, 3 things you hear, and move 3 parts of your body, eyes blinking, rotate your neck, flex your fingers, to really complete the practice and bring yourself back to being more fully grounded in the space you're in. The time box reassures your nervous system, we can feel and we can stop. This is not an endless flood. At the end of the practice, you can safely burn the written expression, or dispose of it, or delete the audio file if that feels better for you. The goal is to release it from your body in a safe space and container and not leave it festering inside or feeling unresolved. And finally, practice 4, using one simple body-based release tool. Sometimes words aren't accessible or enough. Your body still needs ways to discharge stress and emotional energy. So pick one of these to try a few times a week. The first is shaking. In private, stand and gently shake out your hands, your arms, your shoulders, your legs for 60 to 90 seconds. Imagine excess tension leaving your body. Pair this with your favorite upbeat music if this appeals to you, or do it in the shower and envision everything you're shaking off you going down the drain. You may or may not know that animals naturally do this after threats. Then there's humming or toning. You can do this in the car or the shower. And hum or make gentle vowel sounds on the exhale. This stimulates vagus pathways and can shift you toward a calmer state. We go into this in previous episodes, so be sure to check those out if you haven't already. And finally, there's pushing the wall. Place your palms against a wall at chest height and lean in and push as you exhale with intention. Then relax on the inhale. Let your jaw fully unclench and repeat this several times, and finish by shaking out your arms and hands and maybe rotating your head and neck. This can be especially helpful for anger. These practices send physical signals that the event is over, helping complete stress cycles instead of storing them as tension and symptoms. For some of you, emotional repression is tied to significant trauma, childhood abuse or neglect, intimate partner violence, medical trauma, or other overwhelming experiences. If you feel numb most of the time and are scared that if you start feeling you'll fall apart, or if you experience flashbacks, self-harm, or suicidal thoughts, or if your physical symptoms are severe or rapidly worsening, please don't do this work alone. This is the territory where a trauma-informed therapist, somatic practitioner, or other skilled support can help you move slowly and safely, so your system isn't re-traumatized by trying to rip the lid off all at once. Needing help doesn't mean you're weak. It means you understand how powerful this mind-body connection really is, and you're choosing to honor that in a way that's more kind and authentic for you and your powerful mid-season body. And as you move into your week, I'd love to offer a few gentle questions you can carry with you. What has my body been trying to say that my mouth hasn't been allowed to? Where in my life do I notice the biggest gap between what I feel inside and what I say outside? And what's one tiny safe way I'm willing to let more truth move through words, writing, breath, or movement this week? You don't have to reopen every chapter of your past or feel everything you've ever repressed. Every small, honest moment is like setting down one stone from a backpack your body has carried for years. If you do nothing else, simply start by noticing the subtle and sometimes not so subtle cues your body keeps sharing with you, and gently name and notice the emotions that surface as you move throughout your day. If this conversation helped you understand your body a bit more and maybe offered some compassion for the ways you've had to be strong for a long time, I'd love for you to keep walking with me here on Rooted Insights. Follow, like, and subscribe to the podcast, and if it feels supportive, share this episode with another mid-season woman who would be supported by these grounded, science-informed, and heart-centered conversations. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What's one body symptom you suspect might be carrying an emotional load? And what's one tiny experiment you're willing to try this week? An emotion check-in, a tiny truth upgrade, 5 minutes of venting, or a simple body release. Your experiment might be exactly what another woman needs to hear to realize she's not alone and she's not broken. Her body has just been holding more than its fair share for a very long time. Remember, you're not behind. You're in a new season of your life, and your body, along with all the emotions it's carried, has gotten you this far. You're allowed to support it now, not just with supplements or schedules, but with honesty and kindness. We're here rooting in together, one emotion, one breath, one tiny release at a time. Until next time on Rooted Insights.